Hi, I'm Jonathan Amy, and we're here for the Heart the Chart share. Clay Starling is joining us, and he's going to be presenting what looks to be a really interesting chart. So Clay, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, Elizabeth, and Shelley for inviting me to share my views of the power of the standard acceleration technology. I have a couple slides to sort of look at. So the first question I wanted to address is why I love the standard acceleration chart. First, it's because it's standard. Standardization is one of the hallmarks of science, enables us to have efficient and accurate communication. So that's the first reason I love this chart. Secondly, it makes visible the three parameters of performance of frequency, learning slope, or acceleration, and bounce. And third, you can see and quantify rate of learning. So because of the real-time scale and the count per minute multiply scale, you actually can see rapidity of learning, which informs our decision making and helps us determine which interventions are actually impacting learning the most. Fourth, the visually significant change equals behaviorally impressive change. So if you bisect the angle of the standard chart, it's a halving or doubling, and turns out that lay people can consistently detect changes of doubling without any data. So the chart actually kind of marries our objective and subjective perceptions, which is a kind of powerful, what the research community calls social validity. And fifth, we can view all human behavior on the same chart. So those are my reasons for loving the standard acceleration chart. The other area I wanted to address is the questions relating to aims and fluency performance. I've switched to using the term mastery and kind of identifying the three components or elements of mastery of being pace, accuracy, and rhythm. Pace being the correct per minute standards based on competent performers, accuracy, only inconsistent error, and rhythm being 3 to 5 consecutive days at the pace and mastery criteria. So I've kind of been using recently the term mastery standards to relate to these terms. These are the levels that most people achieve. A couple examples are like mobility pace, which is 120 to 100 steps a minute. So a timer at a crosswalk is assuming that you're going to be able to get across that in a fairly standard period of time. Or like reading pace is 200 correct words per minute. So if you're in a foreign film and wanting to read the subtitles as they come by, you'll want to be reading at that pace. So these tend to be the standards that society sets up, assuming that most people will get there. And if people don't have environmental, physiological, or developmental kind of constraints, most basically people do get there. Now, certainly there are some folks who won't get there, and through prosthetic systems like a wheelchair would help with mobility. They may be able to approach those standards, and some folks just won't get there, and we have to make adjustments for them. But here are what I call the educational vital signs, kind of covers some of the more important skill areas to focus on. I'm going to kind of look at this information summary one, number 4, in terms of the chart I share. So thinks information unit, says information unit. So the chart is kind of what I call a classic learning sequence. So with accuracy building kind of starting, then pace building and rhythm building, so the 3 elements of mastery. So this is Jake, who's doing thinks fact, says fact, what we also call retell. Jake's a 4th grader. So his corrects are starting around 10 a minute and bouncing a little bit around 2. Then with some interventions, get some kind of slow growth and correct and some decrease in errors. Tried an intervention here that wasn't too successful. You see the corrects dropped and the errors rose. And then reintroduced an intervention that got him up to the mastery level. And for this skill area, which was just giving miscellaneous facts, the mastery criteria is 20 to 30 per minute, and the M stands for that range. So you can see that Jake is actually achieving that 3 to 5 consecutive days in the mastery correct range, and also his errors are at 0 for 3 to 5 consecutive days. So that's kind of showing the achieving the mastery criteria, including accuracy, pace, and rhythm. So the one area that, this is how I teach folks to kind of address the mastery issue. The one area that I haven't done as much work on is once you reach these levels, what the application looks like. So folks who are doing REAPs or RESA kind of checks are living in that world more than I have. So that kind of summarizes what I wanted to share. So I'll kind of open it up for questions.
Clay, that was right at the 5 minutes of terrific. So you addressed some of the mastery criteria. How would you're looking at this, how would you know if you need to go back and work on this, or if that mastery standard wasn't quite high enough for this learner? Like, do you find situations where you have to go beyond the mastery standard?
Well, you know, like I say, basically trying to use the notion of mastery standard based on competent performers. I think the presumption of that indicates that those folks who have ease with a skill are performing at these levels, and as a result, you know, things that we tend to do that we find more comfortable, we tend to do more often. So I haven't necessarily assumed that that you need to go above what we've identified as a competent learner's performance. Like I say, I think the area that I'm most interested in looking at more carefully is kind of what I call just the application area. Like Eric Houghton's actually started with what was called, I guess, reps. It was retention and application performance standards. And I sort of reverted to that as opposed to the more elaborate, like RESA type of criteria. And I've been using like remembering and applying mastery. And it seems to me that really the ultimate issue is application. In other words, if you can apply, then you've obviously you're remembering. And it seems like most of what we talk about within the outcome areas is really variations on application. In other words, can you apply it in distracting environments? Can you apply it, you know, when you're trying to solve a new problem? So in essence, to me, the issue of once you hit what I would call par mastery, does that enable you to apply it in various settings? So, and that's kind of, I think some people have kind of looked at that, but probably more in-depth analysis. So that would be in order, I believe.
That makes complete sense. And yeah, it definitely needs more thorough analysis. Thank you for that. Does anyone have any other questions? Elizabeth, Shelley?
Well, you know, since we started in precision teaching with just having aims, not, you know, just wanting the student to do better, and then got into fluency, could you help me a little bit with how you moved to mastery from fluency? I mean, what helped you make that decision to use that vocabulary?
Well, actually, I think the first prompt was I was working with a parent with one of her students, and she kept kind of using the term mastery because fluency didn't seem to kind of resonate so much with her. And it seems like there's a bit of variety in how people use that term. If you go into the speech therapy world, a little different variation than maybe educators. And I think we all agreed when we were mostly using the term fluency, that there are these three elements to fluency. There's a pace element, there's an accuracy element, and then there's this kind of smoothness or rhythm element. And by kind of taking them out and naming them that way, and as this chart kind of shows, I think this really is kind of a classic learning sequence, that you start with kids who we need to build their accuracy because they don't actually know the skill very well. Then once their errors start to come down, a lot of our focus is building pace so that they're really getting automatic with it. But we know all sorts of kids who are accurate and quite quick, but they don't have smoothness. They don't have the rhythm. And so there really is a third piece to this mastery, which is getting kind of what an athlete would say in the flow, or a musician would say in the groove, where you're actually kind of rhythmic. It's not the fastest possible, which some people get confused when they hear, timing or pace. It's that smooth, comfortable portion. So mastery seems to resonate more with the kind of the lay public, and by kind of looking at these three elements, it kind of expands on, well, when you have mastery, what does it look like? And hopefully this chart sort of demonstrates that it has those three components.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's what I found communicating is better with mastery too. So thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Clay, thank you so much for this. This was a terrific chart. Terrific. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good idea.